Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, March 21, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Spencer Ackerman, columnist for The Nation magazine, author of the Forever Wars newsletter on Ghost, and author of his most recent Reign of Terror, how the 9/11 era destabilized America and produced Trump. Also on the program today, a jittery nation looks to downtown Manhattan as barricades erected around a courthouse awaiting a potential Trump indictment. The IPCC report says we have less than 10 years to slow catastrophic warming. New lawsuit from a Fox producer may create a grab bag run on Fox News' personal, or I should say corporate bank account. LA school workers launch a 3-day strike, the second biggest school system in the country. Joe Biden signs a law to block D.C. City Council's ability to reform D.C. carceral laws. Federal judge blocks California from requiring safety features for new semi-automatic guns. The Israeli government says they'll move ahead with their plans to undermine its judicial system. Macron government barely survives a no-confidence vote. In the wake of his attempts to raise the retirement age, Biden signs a COVID origin info declassification and vetoes a Republican attempt to bar investment managers from socially responsible investing. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma is out today. A couple of things, house cleaning. I should tell you right now that on Thursday, a day when Emma usually is what driving the ship, steering
hosting,
the ship?
I think,
or hosting. Yeah, hosting. You could also say
at the helm.
At the helm. Thank you, Bradley. I am going to go down to Florida for a couple hours, literally, and do the Patrick Bet David show. Which is on Valuetainment. He is an entrepreneur, and he has a show sort of, not too dissimilar from ours, I guess. I haven't seen too much of it, but I'm going down there for, I think the entire trip is less than 24 hours. So I will not get a tan. I probably won't even see the sun. But I'll be on that. And then I think we'll probably run it, later, or show some clips, or stuff like that. So, and he sort of seems to lean a little bit to the right, as far as I can tell. So that could be interesting. I don't know. We'll find out. But so that's happening, and one more day of, I guess, celebrating the 20-year anniversary of our illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq. I am saying celebrate, obviously, somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Just pre-recorded an interview with Spencer Ackerman literally moments ago. He's got a great perspective on these things, and really important that we recognize the disaster that Iraq was, how we got into it, and what we need to do if we don't want to follow down that path again. Here is former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who at the time, and I'm not quite sure exactly when this was, that he was recess appointed to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations during the Bush years. He was considered to be so outside the mainstream that a Republican-controlled Senate would not confirm him. And he had to get a recess appointment by George W. Bush. He was an OG neocon, very much part of the broader sort of like cabal, I guess you could say, that was promoting the Iraq War and the reasons to go into Iraq. And in addition to piece by Spencer Ackerman, I read a piece by I think it was Matthew Schwartz, Matthias Schwartz, Matt Schwartz in Business Insider, where two CIA agents were interviewed, and they made the point that what the Bush administration was doing in the run-up to the Iraq War, they were not looking for justification or for reasons to invade Iraq. That's not what they were looking for from the CIA. What they were looking for were promotional points, were talking points in which to sell this idea to the American public. And part of that sales job has been the sort of retroactive claiming and moving of the goalposts and claiming and essentially changing the reasons why we went into Iraq, because they were all built on a lie. And the Iraq War, by any estimation, a disaster, except for the oil companies that have leases. And I guess from Iran's perspective, but they didn't want, they weren't the ones who invaded Iraq this time around. Iran was definitely empowered by what we did to Iraqi society. Here is John Bolton on Time Radio's John Pinar. Is that his name? Here's a clip from there.
I do the same thing because knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that were made after the war, disbanding the Iraqi army, setting up the Coalition Provisional Authority. Look, the decision to overthrow Saddam Hussein was made not simply on the basis of the threat he posed in 2003, but the inevitable threat he would have posed once free of UN sanctions, once free of UN weapons inspectors. Saddam
okay,
Hussein,
so I mean, this is important because none of what he's saying, incidentally, was sold as the justification for the war. There was an imminent threat, we were told, to the United States by Saddam Hussein. And all these things that you're saying about that, you know, we failed in the post-war, the part of the endeavor of the Iraq War was this opportunity to create a year zero type of situation where, you know, they could have a petri dish of like Milton Friedman's fantasy of a completely privatized Garden of Eden, if you will. And this idea now, I mean, you could see just even in that brief clip where Bolton is moving the goalpost. Well, even if Saddam Hussein was not a threat to us then, we were preempting his ability to be a threat in the future. Contemplate that for a moment. First off, there's no reason to believe that he would have been any more of a threat in the future than he was at that moment. But the idea that we're going to go in and kill hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians, and again, hundreds of thousands to 1 million. It depends on whose numbers you want to use. But there is no contesting. It is not controversial that we killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. We displaced millions of people, created millions of refugees, destabilized the region because of a futuristic threat. Keep running.
The basis of the threat he posed in 2003, but the inevitable threat he would have posed once free of UN sanctions, once free of UN weapons inspectors. Saddam Hussein is dead, and Iraq is not pursuing nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. For people who say, well, the Middle East became more unstable, the Middle East became more unstable for lots of reasons, and an Iraq armed with nuclear weapons would have been far more unstable than what we see today. The biggest mistake made by the United States, and we made a number, there's no doubt about it. The biggest mistake, however, was Barack Obama's decision in 2011 to withdraw American forces, which did provide a bit of a ballast for the country of Iraq. And we found within 3 years, given the rise of ISIS, unpredicted by anybody, we had to go back in. All of this is counterfactual hypothesizing, but I believe had we stayed in Iraq, the situation would be much better. The second biggest mistake.
Pause it. I mean, this is just, I mean, this is, first of all, there is absolutely zero reason to believe that Iraq would have nuclear capability today. Zero reason. They found nothing when the weapons inspectors were there. Nothing. No program, nothing. The idea that the problem with Iraq was 12 years after he claims we won the war, Barack Obama pulled out the majority of troops. How many decades were we supposed to occupy this country in this successful war? Continue.
All of this is counterfactual hypothesizing, but I believe had we stayed in Iraq, the situation would be much better. The second biggest mistake was not taking advantage of having a substantial American military position simultaneously in Afghanistan to Iran's east and Iraq to Iran's west to help the dissidents, help the opposition in Iran, and allow them to remove the Ayatollahs from power.
I mean, history records that there were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq, which was one of the main arguments for the invasion in the first place. Tell me, if you could do it again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I'd do the same thing, because knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes.
It's just a repeat of the beginning thing.
There you go. So basically, his one lament is
we didn't use it to
two laments. He's got two laments. One is that we haven't permanently occupied that country. And two is that we didn't use that permanent occupation as a springboard to invade Iran.
Glad everyone's being reflective.
Unbelievable. Stick around for Spencer Ackerman as he dismantles a lot of what you just heard and more. And the importance of revisiting this. It's going to happen again. It's just a question of when. And it's going to happen again because there's been no reckoning with every time it's happened in the past. None. Couple of words from our sponsors today. I realized that I'm going to be using, all right, I want to be circumspect here, but I am part of a business endeavor that is largely unrelated from the Majority Report. It's like a little hobby that I had no. We'll talk about it soon. But the amazing thing is that I'm going to be using both of our two of our sponsors today. First, Shopify. Shopify is a commerce platform. It has revolutionized millions of businesses worldwide. Doesn't matter whether you're selling, I don't know, tchotchkes or DVDs or merch or seeds. Doesn't matter what you're selling. Shopify is the way to do it. It simplifies online selling and it simplifies in person. So you can do both simultaneously and focus, of course, on growing your business. Shopify covers every sales channel, provides an in-person POS system, payment system, to an all-in-one e-commerce platform. It lets you sell across all the social media platforms, like the TikTok marketplace, the Facebook marketplace, the Instagram marketplace. I imagine Twitter will have a marketplace soon. You know, Shopify will be there if they do that. It is packed with industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth. Shopify gives you complete control of your business and your brand. And this is the best part. You know it's true, or I wouldn't be able to do it. You don't have to learn any new skills or design code. Thanks to 24/7 help and extensive business course library, Shopify is there to support your success in every step of the way. Now it's your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. You can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority. All lowercase. Shopify.com/majority. $1 per month trial period. Go to shopify.com/majority. Take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/majority. And another sponsor today will also power this business. I've used stamps.com in the past, back in the days where we would send out DVDs as a membership enticement. Back in the early days, I would have Mila stick them in a bag. She was like, she must have been 8. And I would pay her, Arkansas child labor laws wages. And she would put them in a bag. And all my postage was via stamps.com. It is time for you to get ahead of the competition by using stamps.com to mail and ship. Stamp.com lets you print your own postage and shipping labels right from your home or office. Stamps.com has postage rates that you literally cannot find anywhere else. Up to 84% off a U.S. Postal Service and UPS. For 25 years, Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses. And if you sell products online, Stamps.com seamlessly connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart. I'm going to be using it soon. Knock on wood. Stamps.com to print postage wherever you do business. I know people are very excited about what this business is going to be. That's going to be exciting. And the beauty about Stamps.com, all you need, computer and a printer. They even send you a free scale. This is super easy. Set up your business for success when you get started with Stamps.com today. Sign up with promo code Majority Report for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. There are no long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, enter code Majority Report, all one word. Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, enter the code Majority Report. We'll, of course, put the links in the podcast and YouTube description. And lastly, what protects me in all my online endeavors? What keeps my ID safe? What keeps my kids from spending too much time watching one of the most ridiculous YouTube shows I've ever seen in my life instead of doing their homework on their computer? Aura. Aura is an easy-to-use app that includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura protects you from scammers and hackers. It scans the so-called dark web, sees if your email or your passwords, or really importantly, your social security number is up for sale. Someone found it and is selling it to somebody who's going to exploit it. And if it finds it, it alerts you fast. They help you fight back against those websites that make your your personal information public by automatically requesting removal of your info. This helps with robocalls, operational security. And you got to keep doing it automatically, and that's what Aura does. Aura also gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries. So if someone's trying to open a loan or a credit card in your name, Aura lets you know fast. I had this when I opened up a bank account for Mila. I, of course, knew it was me, but it was just incredibly reassuring to realize that, that nobody can get away with, building up a credit card bill in my name. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and your personal information safe and encrypted. They protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware. Bad guys can't break in. And like I said, they also allow you to restrict what the kids can do with their devices. You can restrict specific apps. You can put on screen time limits. You can put on focus time so that they're not using YouTube and they're actually doing their coding or whatever they claim to be doing with their YouTube in the background, supposedly. I'm not pointing any fingers, Saul. Their password manager lets you store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently. And the beauty of this is all in one. This is a one-stop shop. You don't have to get 7 different apps to do all these functions. You just need one. Aura, aura.com/majority, AURA.com/majority. You are going to be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. You can go get a 2-week free trial at aura.com/majority. Of course, link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions and at majority.fm. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, Spencer Ackerman, columnist for The Nation, author of the Forever Wars newsletter on Ghost, and author of his latest Reign of Terror, How the 9/11 Era Destabilized America and Produced Trump. Quick break, right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Spencer Ackerman, columnist for The Nation, author of the Forever Wars newsletter on Ghost. You should check out. You can, after you read Spencer's, come over and see the AM Quickie. Spencer, you and I have probably been talking about this subject on radio or whatever we're talking on now for at least 15 years. I don't know if it was 2004 or 2005, the first time that we spoke, but it would have been around that time. And when I revisit it, and I know you go through this, it becomes incredibly depressing and frustrating in some respects. Here we are on the 20th anniversary, and you're writing about how we've learned really no lessons yet. What are the biggest lessons you think that we haven't learned yet?
Okay, where to begin? Yes, I am forever just going to be Walter Sobchak from The Big Lebowski. The Iraq War is just, and the War on Terror more broadly, is just going to be where I live. That's not fun, but it's required. Only Americans could convince themselves that 20 years is a substantial amount of time. This is an eye blink. There are U.S. troops in Iraq while we speak. This is not ancient history. This is living history. This is affecting the Middle East to this day. This isn't going to change because America, and I'm getting your question, doesn't want to learn very fundamental lessons. Fundamental lesson number 1, American imperialism is bad. It's bad primarily for the people who come under its gaze, who have their wealth extracted, who have their lives destroyed, who are turned into refugees. America needs, frankly, a different socioeconomic model in order to change. We're just going to keep doing resource wars, frankly, under capitalism. That's really, really well established. So number 1, if you don't want to do Iraqs anymore, let's change the fundamental economy of the United States.
All right, let's start with number 1.
All right.
Okay, let's start with number 1, and then we will get to number 2, because one of the things that it occurred to me by 2005, 2006. The American public had, maybe it was even 2004, the American public had no seemingly awareness or deep awareness that we were engaged in a war. It seems to me that there was no sense that we were at war. There was people are just going about their lives, no context. And I'm talking during it. There was no sense that we were in any way like waging a war where hundreds of thousands of people were killed.
Yeah, that was the system working the way it's supposed to work. That ultimately, one of the inevitable consequences of the 1973 creation of the all-volunteer military at the tail end of the Vietnam War, supposedly incorporating a lesson of the Vietnam War, is that all of society no longer goes to war. Increasingly, we're dependent on a professional military class to do this, and that inevitably is going to create a significant social fracture within a country. I heard this so many times, not primarily from civilians, but primarily from the military, that America was not at war. The Army and the Marine Corps was at war. And you remember shortly after 9/11, George W. Bush telling people that, yes, there's this now endless crusade to preserve freedom and so on and so forth, but you should go shopping. Like, things are going to be normal for you. The tax burden on the wealthy is going to come down, which ultimately means the burden is going to be more acutely felt by the working and what'll remain of the middle classes. And that's going to be it. And we should recognize, I think, that once we sort of funnel ourselves into this mode where America decides that it has the right and responsibility to police the world, that the mechanism that is going to do that is going to be one that most of the country is not going to be impacted by and not going to have a burden of supporting beyond a kind of awkward thank you for your service distance. And it is not surprising that many veterans who chose to do that often didn't super choose in the way that we understand the word choosing, because there is such a thing that the veterans talk about called the poverty draft, which is that the military is a pathway to the middle class, while so many pathways to the middle class are failing and not becoming available. And you can hear to this day a justifiable anger and bitterness that the rest of the country wasn't really with them, that certainly didn't understand what they were doing. But that is a structural, you can't even call it defect, because it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Right. And I mean, that's what I think is also that feature not only like sort of inhibits the reaction in real time, but it also makes it that much harder to learn that lesson, because we can't get to lesson number 2 Unlearned without sort of like lesson 1 seeing the actual costs of this. And we have no reports back from Iraq these days. We haven't had it in years and years and years. I don't know if we ever really had it outside of like a couple of independent journalists who weren't embedded with U.S. forces, to get a sense of just like how much devastation, how much we immiserated this country. We didn't even know during the Clinton embargo years, and so we had no sense of what was going on there at the time. Before we get to 2, because I think we need to also get like what the agenda was for some of these players. Let's go back and talk about the run up to the war, because I had mentioned to you that and one of the things I had never heard, because I will cop to not having read Alan Greenspan's biography, was that he conceded it was largely about oil, which I'm sure you remember, though, at the time when anybody in the run up to the Iraq war said this is about oil, they were essentially, treated like lepers. And laughed out of the room by across the full spectrum of pontificators. But let's talk about that run up a little bit, because at the time it seemed like it seemed like it was going so fast, but this was over the course of a year and a half, essentially, just slowly, methodically pushing these points. What part of that sticks out to you? Like, I'm reading this interview in Business Insider by Matt Schwartz about the two CIA agents who, basically said, we need to call George W. Bush a liar because he was a liar. He lied about the knowledge that they supposedly had, the surety that they had. Does anything resonate? I mean, I know you were I think you were in college at that time, maybe, but what resonates for you from that period?
Primarily that the people in charge of the country, the Bush administration, its Republican and media enablers, its Democratic cowed enablers, viewed 9/11 as an opportunity, not as a disaster that ought to occasion a very serious inquiry into how U.S. foreign policy had blown back on itself, but an opportunity to reassert those violent, extractive, and domineering elements of U.S. foreign policy as a response to 9/11. The more you drill down on the Iraq War, the more you kind of get, this sense of well-trodden paths to inevitability that at the time, people, particularly in the Clinton administration and its allies, viewed as obstacles to an invasion, while ultimately creating this kind of path dependency that once a true shock to the system like 9/11 happened, made it extremely convivial to invading. Like, for instance, not only bombing Iraq throughout the 1990s, not only the economic sanctions on Iraq, but at a time of U.S., kind of being, at the time of the United States being the last superpower standing, viewing Saddam Hussein as this unacceptable holdout against American power in the Middle East, which becomes a focal point. So in 1998, the Clinton administration, it's the height of impeachment, agrees to this neoconservative-backed measure in the Senate called the Iraq Liberation Act. The Clinton people view that as a way of kind of having their cake and eating it too, forestalling a larger war on Iraq, but still making regime change, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, the official policy of the United States. And after 9/11, this allows a lot of people in the Bush administration to, on the one hand, cynically, but on the other hand, they have a bit of a point, say that why would you object to ultimately overthrowing Saddam Hussein? You ultimately agreed that that ought to be the goal of U.S. foreign policy, and it has a democratic legacy as well as a republic, as well as being a Republican ambition. Why not just do it? The security state goes along with that. People, shout to Matt; he's a great reporter. The CIA, I think, is not really in a position to evade blame for the Iraq War. It is multiple things are true at once. Multiple layers exist on top of one another. Bush-wide, undoubtedly, the CIA went along with it. In certain circumstances, the same sort of dynamic as with the the Clinton administration applies with the CIA. That efforts they took that they may have conceived of as inhibiting a war, in fact, makes it more likely and ultimately manifest. To give just one example, the Cheney faction within the Bush administration, Vice President Dick Cheney, his aides, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, his aides in the Policy Bureau headed by Doug Feith, they push very aggressively to get the CIA to agree that there is an operational tie between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. This is a complete fantasy. The Iraq War will ultimately make an al-Qaeda presence in Iraq a very virulent reality, and that ultimately becomes ISIS, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Right.
And so the CIA, as a way of trying to bureaucratically get out from under this pressure, caves to it and creates a document under a senior intelligence analyst named Jamie Mishik called Al-Qaeda and Iraq, Assessing a Murky Relationship. which has all of the information that the Cheneyite Rumsfeld faction would want ultimately to be able to marshal, to say such a connection exists, and then say, but we don't really see a lot of these ties. We think a lot of this is kind of, thin, not really substantiated, and so forth. And then the Cheneyites say, thank you for your service. We appreciate you giving us everything we need, and we're going to run with that. And so that's how it went. The CIA was not an obstacle to this at all. And to have the CIA say that its sophisticated analysis was ignored and manipulated by the Bush administration is, fair point. Not exactly wrong, but an evasion of their own responsibility. And ever since, the U.S. intelligence agencies have said it is unfair and mean to point this out when they have other assessments that you want to believe, which is a lot like if I cheat on my spouse, they tend not to trust me in the future. And then I get angry and say, oh, that's unfair. That was that one time in the past. Well, no, that's how violations of trust operate.
And to be clear, what you're describing in terms of this of these reports, particularly that report that was generated, but broadly speaking, they have a 10-page report. It's 9 pages of different possible, sightings of Muhammad Atta in Prague, and Saddam Hussein clearly knows Al Qaeda is in Iraq. And then on page
in the
10,
parts of Iraq he doesn't control.
Right. And in page 10, it says, now a lot of this is very dubious. And also, Hussein is like watching Al Qaeda because he has a very contentious relationship with them in the same way that, like, the United States, Atlanta knows that there are Cop City protesters, type of thing. And they're covering their asses by that page 10. But they also know they're giving the Bush administration what they want at that point. So there's sort of they're getting their cake and eating it too. And we know that if the CIA wants to have a narrative destroyed in the public, they have mechanisms in which to do that, right? I mean, it's not
for instance, creating 2 euphemisms that will be very familiar throughout the war on terrorism. One, enhanced interrogation, which is to say, when we torture, it's not really torture. And one of my personal favorites from the Obama era, targeted killings.
Right.
When we assassinate people with drones without even knowing necessarily who they are. So the CIA gets its narrative across very often.
Right. So they have the ability to deal with that. And they just decided.
Let me also just say, in fairness to the CIA, and I know that's always a fraught thing to say, but to zoom out a second, it's important to look at the structural dynamic that the Bush administration pursued after 9/11, which is to say, holy shit, there's a giant fucking smoking crater in lower Manhattan and at the Pentagon. And we were in power when this happened. The intelligence agencies are at fault. Republicans in Congress immediately ran with that because it was convenient. Democrats who, even if they were inclined to challenge that narrative, which they were not, the press not also inclined to challenge that narrative. You heard Republican talking points around then that said, well, Bush was in power for 8 months. Clinton was in power for 8 years. Whose fault is this? Let's investigate. The Democratic Party was like, all right, we don't want any of that smoke. That's fine. The intelligence agencies can take the blame for that. Being put in a position of institutional responsibility for a catastrophe like 9/11 is a bureaucratically perilous position for the intelligence agencies to be in. To get out from under that danger, the Bush administration made very clear that the intelligence agencies, as demonstrated by Cheney's constant presence at CIA headquarters, was going to have to go along with some stuff.
Right, which is, we want that raw intelligence. I don't care what it says, what the caveats are. We just want the words operational ties. And
they said in conservative media all throughout the run-up to the war and then after, when it was time to affix blame for how badly the occupation is going, a forerunner of the way the Trump people who want to wield a deep state of their own blame and discredit the one that actually exists, which just so happens to be extremely, extremely, liable for a lot of what exists, and say that it's CIA and State Department appeasement of Saddam Hussein, stretching back through a long period of appeasement of the Arab world in general, that forms an impediment to the valorous war on terror, when in fact the war on terror is being waged in its surveillance, in its torture, in its detention elements by the intelligence agencies themselves.
All right, I want to get
the compounding morass of blame.
Yes. And I want to get to the incentive structure, which brings us to like the lesson number 2 in just a moment. But where was all of these sort of systems failed, right? And theoretically, like let's talk about the media, because the media, if there's going to be any check or accountability for these various sort of structures that failed to do the right thing, we'll get to the incentive structure, which incentivizes the wrong thing to do. But where is like sort of popular opinion, as it were, like it's almost as if the American public is just sort of, they're watching this tennis match on some level, and they're just like as if they have no agency in this story whatsoever. And from my perspective, it seems like it's the media, the media failure there, right? Like, I mean, because that's the only opportunity for there to be any type of accountability for these players who have a different incentive structure. Theoretically, the media has another incentive structure, but it just sort of seemed to have vanished.
So I had forgotten this until someone tweeted it the other day. There was this guy your viewers, I'm sure, probably don't remember, especially if they're younger than we are, named Scott McClellan. He was one of George W. Bush's press secretaries.
Yep.
He leaves around, I want to say 2005, 6, I may be forgetting, and then he writes a memoir. And it's really an interesting document because it's less blame evading and victim creating than your typical like Beltway memoir, Democrat or Republican, general or senior intelligence official, and so on. And this one just sort of marvels from the perspective of White House press secretary at like how little pushback they received throughout the entire prospect, that how they didn't really have to manipulate the media, that it was just pushing on an open door, that the press had gone along with this jingoistic narrative. And like McClellan had this, he just like couldn't conceive of it. And the reason why he couldn't conceive of it is because he hasn't read, Chomsky and Herman, and he doesn't understand the political economy of the media, and is, typically, eager to say like that darn liberal media. And here he was saying, like, I can't believe the liberal media didn't liberal enough, when in fact it was demonstrating really long-standing historical patterns of liberalism, which is going along with these kinds of fiascos instead of in fact challenging. And
that's fascinating. All I can think of is Jeff Gannon Guckert. When I hear McClellan,
yeah. Your viewers are not going to remember that. These are deep cuts.
Deep cuts. We'll maybe someday we'll go down the Jeff Gannon Guckert wormhole. But so the press just completely drops the ball. Like, why do you think that was?
They bought into the war on terror. They were terrified of being outside the very limited and deliberately cultivated band of acceptable opinion, which they at the same time on their opinion sides policed. You'll remember that Phil Donahue was like the only anti-war and like very gingerly anti-war.
Yes.
TV host on cable news. He got canned. There was money to be made in the war on terror. There was a spectacle, and there was also a feel-good narrative. And those things are more profitable than ultimately the kind of reporting that you saw from organizations like Knight Ridder that did real national security reporting, that found people in the bowels of the national security state that knew that this was a manufactured crisis and reported it accordingly. And then when they reported it, the major news organizations did not follow that lead and instead doubled down on finding through carefully, presented administration leaks, validation of what the narrative was. Like, for instance, the famous New York Times story about how, Saddam Hussein had, gotten these shipments of aluminum tubes. And even though this is not true, only, that could only be destined for a nuclear weapons program and so forth. And that was credulously presented to the American people as fact. And accordingly, every layer you could see of supposed check on power that we are led from the time, we get our first taste of civics in school to believe holds back this sort of ruthless and blatant aggression, not just internationally, but domestically, fails. All of it.
As you say that dynamic with the press, I think the last time we spoke was about your book, Reign of Terror, and how this era that we're talking about destabilized America and in many respects brought us to the point that we're at now with Trump, which on some level, when you say it makes, obvious, like, of course, something that happened 15, 20 years ago would impact where we are today. But the American psyche, as you started off by saying, this interview is such that, like, those are just two different eras and no relationship whatsoever. I always come back to Gore Vidal's. I remember at one point Gore Vidal came on the show back in the Air America days and, was talking about the United States of amnesia. And I couldn't really wrap my head around what he was talking about until, I see Michelle Obama hugging George Bush and just sort of like this, the canonization of him. But do you think that dynamic of the media, because I remember Knight Ridder doing this. I remember in the run up to the war, freaking out, and Janine was going on Fox to try and argue against it because she was the only person allowed to go on TV at that time and argue against the war. And, reading The Project for a New American Century and reading Knight Ridder and seeing all of this information, but on page 16 of the newspaper, while the first 15 pages are with the sort of Atta may have been in Prague. And I wonder if that dynamic, also set the table for stuff like the CDC is saying coronavirus is bad, but this website says it's a plandemic by Bill Gates. We've seen this movie before. Maybe we should just believe that it's a plandemic. I wonder how much that dynamic, where the media was completely kowtowed and missed the story of Iraq for all intents and purposes, sort of softened the ground, as it were, for this complete lack of faith in the media reporting during a pandemic.
And I think what we in the media have not really come to terms with as we look at all this stuff, we're like, oh my God, how could these people believe it? Is that we deserve it. We deserve that lack of faith. We deserve that, immediate, overwhelming, not just skepticism. I think skepticism is a different phenomenon than what we're talking about here, but that hostility. Now, do I believe that there is not also good and reality-based and thorough journalism? Of course not. There is all over if you're willing to look for it, but that ain't going to be what's, put on the airwaves in this sort of jingoistic way that we got used to throughout the war on terror. And it hasn't ended. The legacy of this doesn't go away just because it became such an awful, fiasco. History doesn't reset every time the United States elects a president, particularly of a different party. That's just not how any of this works. And there also wasn't, one of the things that, you saw so much. And here's where I would want to push back a little on what you were kind of saying throughout the last, couple questions about like the mindset of the American people. Tens of millions of people worldwide knew this was nonsense and demonstrated against it.
Without a doubt. And
that meant absolutely nothing to their elected officials. It was denigrated. It was treated as mob rule, irresponsibility, objectively pro-Saddam was something you heard a lot from elite media. There was, I could really go on with that, but the point is that this was a manufactured crisis, and lots of people saw through it, and that will inevitably have an effect, a profound effect, on the way many people, both those who went along with the war and those who opposed the war, people who simply, committed the, very understandable decision to believe what their leaders were telling them at a time of enormous post 9/11 public fear.
Right.
Ultimately, that was a betrayed trust. And I don't think we should blame the people for that. I think we should blame the people who both perpetrated that breach of faith and those who enabled it. And those structural imbalances persist today, and their legacies persist.
I accept that that correction. I mean, I think to a certain extent too, though. I remember the sort of real intense violence towards or threat of violence towards people who were vocal in opposing the war. I mean, it was the hostility level was super intense. These people were very, very emboldened.
And this is one of the ways you can see a bit of the I don't want to call it a beta test, but a bit of a precursor condition to the kind of environment you would see, really regnant on the right now in the age of MAGA, however much MAGA insists upon disavowing any relationship it had with the architects of the Iraq War. The war on terror, and certainly at the time of the war in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq, was an opportunity to sort real Americans, those who went along with this, from conditional Americans, those who did not go along with it or are from the wrong, race, religion, socioeconomic background, and so forth. That is how manufactured hysteria has always worked. It works in this case. It works extremely well. It has a very powerful heritage from the Cold War, and we can't pretend like the war on terror is the first time this ever happened. The reason why it's so familiar in this respect, the reason why we can trace these lineages is because of how American and how familiar it is, because of the way this is how the United States, you can really, you can make arguments about this being the case going back to 1619. You can make a case about this going back to, the Mexican-American War, which is, sold entirely on a lie and is how we got most of the Western states. You can go back to Vietnam. You can certainly go to the Cold War period, where you get an easy justification for saying who is truly American and who is not by who stands with this crusade of the elites that preserves, call it what you want, capitalist dominance, white supremacist capitalist dominance, and so on.
All right, well, let's get to that capitalist dominance, because the lesson that the number 2 lesson that you suggest that we have not learned and need to learn is that this type of imperialism, these type of endeavors, are intrinsically tied to what I think is the incentive structure of capitalism. And on some level, we're seeing it play out with China. I don't know. I mean, hopefully we don't get into some type of armed conflict with them. But this is so much of what we're talking about with China. I'm quite convinced that the securing of the oil, and you write in your piece of the oil contracts that these international and American oil companies have. In my mind, it was always about controlling the spigot. Like, you want your buddy to have control of the keg at the party so that you can get your beer early. And we just wanted to make sure that China did not control the keg to fuel their economy, literally, in my estimation. And we're taking the next steps in that pursuit. But talk about the inextricable link between capitalism and imperialism in this sense.
So I would encourage everyone, watching this to read Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine, if they haven't. I'm not going to be able to put it more eloquently than that. She pointed out really clearly how there was a sense in which the occupation of Iraq was not a disaster, that it was, in fact, a way to control Iraq's resources, including its state resources. This is one of the, we heard so much throughout the war. I'm as guilty of this as anyone in terms of my early, coverage of the Iraq war. So much about like these central mistakes that the early occupation authority, which was known as the Coalition Provisional Authority, makes at the beginning of the occupation. Its famous early orders to ban the Ba'ath Party, which had been a prerequisite for getting state jobs in Iraq, and also to disband the Iraqi military, which incentivized lots of people to just take their weapons, go home and fight the Americans. All of those things are genuinely and justifiably pointed out as like early and really central mistakes. But we don't talk enough about a CPA order. I think it's either 38 or 39. I forget off the top of my head. From September of 2003, which is a thoroughgoing privatization of an Iraqi governmental infrastructure that had previously been in state hands. I am not saying that those state hands were democratic hands.
Right.
It absolutely was not. That was Saddam Hussein's state apparatus. But the fact of the matter was there was a different economic model going on in Iraq that Iraqis had become extremely accustomed to, and that had portioned out real wealth from Iraq to, again, not democratically, not fairly, not equally, but on a far more widely distributed basis than ultimately would happen when the United States forces privatization on Iraqi state resources. In 2008, when the surge was winding down and it looked like the Iraqi client government had been put on a more stable footing, the State Department prevailed upon the Iraqi government at the time to allow massive concessions to 5 Western oil companies. One of them was French, for good measure. The French were against the war, but now it's time to let bygones to be bygones when the trough was there. And oil development was at that point in Western hands. When Trump says, it was a dumb war, we should have taken the oil, we took a lot of the oil. Like did the United States, did the people of the United States enjoy that wealth? No, but the corporations, the hydrocarbon corporations, sure did. And that, under Klein's analysis, which I think is quite compelling, demonstrates a lot of how the kind of nitty gritty of the Iraq War actually occurred. All throughout, this was considered impolite to the point of calumny, to pointing out that the Iraq War had real economic winners and losers, and who those winners and losers were. And that helps understand not just how empire works in an age of neoliberalism, but also how American foreign policy works to conceal the economic bases that it operates from, and in its interest, it performs its actions.
Spencer Ackerman, columnist for The Nation, author of Forever Wars newsletter on Ghost. Also, folks should really, if they really want to understand this, in addition to shock doctrine, they should read your book, Reign of Terror, because it really, it's just such a important lesson that, you know, these things, history is not a series of snapshots.
Can I just say one last thing in conclusion? I'm very grateful to you, Sam.
Please.
I'm sure we are going to be talking about this, you know, on the 40th anniversary of the invasion as well.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. If there was no accountability for any of this, so we should never expect it to change. We will have to change it. We don't have to live in this world that they have made. We may inherit it, but we don't have to operate according to its logic. And if we organize, we have a chance of actually defeating it. I would also just say, as a bit of a conclusion, that, you know, you mentioned this coalescing Cold War with China. That has a real material component as well. It is a mineral component. It is a rare earth element component. It is also a manufactured resource component like semiconductors. And instead you are, you know, instead of recognizing that, you are getting a lot of Iraq-like BS about how this will be, you know, a challenge between authoritarianism and democracy.
Right.
As if the United States is A, truly democratic, and B, its allies in this endeavor will be fully democratic as well. That's never been the case in any Cold War. It won't be with this one.
Spencer Ackerman, thanks so much for your time, man. We'll put links to all of both your column and the Ghost newsletter and the book. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sam.
Again, make sure you check out Spencer's not Substack, Ghost, and newsletter, and his book. You will not be disappointed. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. We will take your phone calls, 646-257-3920. Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, you also get the free half, free of commercials, and you get the fun half. And you can pick up the app and IM us if you're a member via the app at majorityapp.com. That's jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Emma, last night was ESPN, right? What is today? Tuesday?
It's Tuesday, yeah.
Oh my God.
That's
I
right.
can't even figure out what day it is. What happened, Bradley?
We just did a little bit of a March Madness recap, just the last 4 days of NCAA tournament action, and then just touched a little bit on some more NFL free agency updates, and then talked about Andrew Wiggins' absence from the Golden State Warriors. And that's mostly what we got into. YouTube.com/ESPN show for more there.
All right, folks, you can check that out if you like sports. And if you don't like sports, but you know somebody who does like sports, send them over there on Mondays and Thursdays. Matt Leck Media. What's happening in the Matt Leck Media?
Yeah, tonight on The Left Reckoning, Danny Bessner is going to join us, talk about fascism and the Iraq War a little bit. And we're also going to be talking about Minnesota going at public lunch or school lunch debt, and talk about Ted Lasso showing up at the White House a little bit, probably in the postgame. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Why? What happened with Ted Lasso going to the White House?
It came on, said, they got a new season out now, so mental health is really important, and everyone should, not feel ashamed to get mental health. I mean, my point is going to be that, I think we can dispense with like the shame narratives about mental health once we get rid of the price discrimination.
Right.
I think this notion that it's shame that's leading people. Everybody that I know who wants to go to a therapist isn't ashamed to do it. It's a giant cost.
I honestly, I think that narrative has shifted dramatically. Like when I was a
Right.
kid, it was completely shameful to see a therapist. It was just not, you didn't do it unless there was something really wrong with you. That message is honestly for like Biden's generation.
Yeah, exactly.
But the cost is really for just about everybody else in America. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Let's read some IMs, shall we? Let's go down here. A certain VIP will be calling in from 502 area code today. I don't know what that means, but I will check that out. Emma Ismish, holy crap, starting on time today. Kid tested, Politburo approved. Hey, I'm our crew. Hope you're doing well. For me, I've been up 36 hours straight trying to figure out my washing machine. I don't have any female neighbors, so I'm not sure what to do. Might try the hammer again. Wish me luck. Lawful. Patrick bet David who? Pac-Man? And what did he bet? We've come full circle, Shamuel. I marched in London thanks to you. You have no idea how important your content is, says Artie. I was marching in New York and Washington back in 02 or 03. I guess, 02. Yeah, it was 02. DC Letter Carry. Oh my God, I hate watch the PBD pod. And I was going to say PBD just had the director of Gays Against Groomers on his podcast today. It's the most maddening thing ever. I'm glad you're going. John Bolton's Black Heat speaking says, Artie, Tomuff Link, Happy Newsday Tuesday. Some disturbing news from Britain. An official report has concluded that London's Metropolitan Police is systematically racist, misogynist, and homophobic. The report recommends that unless the Met makes a significant progress in addressing this, then the only solution might be to dismantle the Met and start again. I love that. We could learn a lesson or two. Also, I should clarify the deal striking rail workers have accepted will still amount to a real terms pay cut, just not as much as it would have been before. It lasts only 2 years, much better than before, but still work to do. Artie, if I'd support more troops if John Bolton sends his children to fight. I'm not sure that he has kids. Tommy from Yakuba. Sam, we had to take out Saddam Hussein because the future's unknowable. At any moment, the U.S. might start selling him cluster bombs again. Jen from St. Louis. Bolton is an absolute ghoul. Pools Bohemian. Are we getting Sam Seder? Pog. The artist. The woke mob got David Feldman. Apple cideritis. Is Sam watching Pacman's appearance on PBD as prep for Thursday? No, I'm going to try to. I heard he was on. Timothy, what happened to Feldman? Timothy, I hope your kid sues you for lost wages. She didn't get as a child, stamping your DVDs. Capitalism had gone too far. I paid her. I just didn't pay her that much. Punch Drunk Pulpit. Now we know Sam exploited child labor. Is he canceled as soon as this episode is over, or does he get like a 3-day grace period? Monkey, I seriously wonder where these people came out of the woods from. It's actually insane. Some people resonate with politicians who possess no morality or empathy in their reflection. The imperious ghouling America has been participating in forever. Rubber Fingers, 505 code, rationalization for using AI. Daredevil, Sam, make sure to block sonic inflation on Saul's devices. Old Take, there's one explanation for inflation, and it's the stock market. The dollar historically has a negative correlation to the stock market. So whenever there's a boom, there's obviously inflation. Going beyond that, take Costco, for example. They keep prices lower to keep customers happy, and their stock tanked because they weren't taking advantage of the inflationary market. Not only are you incentivized to gouge, but you can't be fired or run out of business for not doing it. Well, there was no inflation during the Trump years. The stock market did quite well during then. Not sure what your argument is. Spocko, Sam, Janine was one of the people allowed on TV to speak against the Iraqi war. She was mocked and attacked 20 years later. Why does the MSM have on the same pundits who are wrong and not the people who are right? Please explain. I mean, I don't think these producers, for the large part, these booking people, that they look at the content of what people say. I just don't think that that's the business. It is just sort of the celebrity or the way in which they say it and the way that they look. I mean, I think it's just.
I mean, was there any kind of house clearing after Vietnam? Probably not, right?
I don't know. Ask Colin Powell.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they're people who are in charge make the rules, and they don't. The vast majority of the people in charge were in favor of the Iraq war, and so it's better to let sleeping dogs lie for these people. I don't know how else to answer it. Emma's unemployed cheesemonger. Do you all have a recommended reading list? Where do I start, Matt? We've had some great books just in the past month or two that I think would be great to read on. Like, you know who I'm talking about, Bradley.
The Clara Mattei book about austerity,
and
Jefferson Cowie.
Yeah,
a great one.
Actually, David Griscom and I have one at bookshop.org. If you search Left Reckoning bookshop.org, you can find the Left Reckoning big book list.
Yeah,
Paxton's book is good, and Claire.
Steve Paxton, How Capitalism Ends. That's a good one.
And wait, Clara Eskies, is that how I say your name?
Oh, sorry. And so Clara Mattei's is The Capital Order. That's the one about
austerity.
Austerity, and then Naomi Oreskes, she wrote The Big Myth.
Yeah. Those are good
very
ones.
Good. All very
but
good.
also shock doctrine. Read that.
Oh yes, like Spencer said, absolutely.
Howard Zinn is a good place to start.
People's history.
MS Mochi. Hi, Sam. Some time ago, Kyle asked you to read an announcement to Alpha Test and Social Network. I got a lot of great feedback, but traditional fundraising was impossible, fortunately, or maybe not unfortunately. For my personal life, I don't know how to give up. I got permission from the NSF to submit a full cyber grant proposal, and if I win, I would get nearly $300,000 in no strings attached funding. Would you be willing to review the project description section? 13 pages long. For clarity, it would be great to get some quality pushback on my ideas and assumptions. I'm not sure how much time I got for something like that. I'm not sure I fully follow what you're talking about, but you can send it to majorityreporters@gmail.com. But I wouldn't, don't count on it too much. Let's put it that way. I don't know what else. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you a better answer on that. When the Fed, Sleepy Mailman, when the Fed interest rates, raises interest rates, you frame it as an attack on the workers. I mean, it's not just me as an attack on the workers. Jay Powell has been very explicit. Larry Summers has been very explicit. We need to raise the number of unemployed people. And it also, obviously, when you do that, you're also depressing wages. We need to undermine workers. So it's not like I frame it that way. That's what it is. It is explicitly, that's the goal. Yeah, that's literally the stated goal is to create unemployment. So I didn't frame it that way. And wages. And when the Fed lowers interest rates, you frame it as flooding investors with free cash. No, I think you've misinterpreted. There are times where the Fed makes 0% loans to big banks. They did that during the financial crisis. They're doing it now. But no, when the Fed lowers interest rates, the reason why the stock market tends to go up is because you don't have other places to put the money that will generate interest rates that give you a safe return. Like now your treasury bonds, theoretically give you a higher rates of return. That's why all those bonds that people bought a while back with lower rates of return are so cheap to buy now, because they don't give you the same return that you could get today. So you have misunderstood what I've said. What do you think the role of the Federal Reserve should be in times of calm and in times of crisis? That is also too general of a perspective. I do not think they should be as aggressively raising rates in search of putting workers out of work to curb inflation. They have a dual mandate. This is not me. They have a dual mandate. Maintain inflation, they say at 2%. I don't know that it needs to be at 2%, but let's say it's 2%. And get the highest possible amount of employment under that. I happen to think that they don't take the second one as seriously, because if they did, they would recognize that it's not really workers that are driving prices right now. They're not. They're partially, but just not. That's not the majority of where the price increases are coming from. And so I think they're using this opportunity to undermine workers, because they always want to undermine workers. Capital does, because it makes it easier for them to take profits.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the kind of problem inherent in this question like that we put too much on interest rate policy to for our political economy policies, instead of like decommodifying and sort of building infrastructure and stuff like that?
We have fiscal policy that the government controls and monetary policy that the Fed controls, largely, broadly speaking. And the Fed can't build things and do infrastructure. They have one hammer. But just because you only have one tool does not mean you have to deploy it, even when there is a problem that in some instances can be solved by a hammer. Like, essentially, like, their job with interest rates is to use a hammer as a demo tool. And I'm suggesting, when you're demoing these big plate glass windows, maybe the best thing is not to use a hammer. That might work for drywall, but don't use it with a plate glass window because it's going to go everywhere. And you're not necessarily going to be resolving the problem you want. You're just going to be blowing everything up. Providence blogger is bigger than Worcester. No, it is not. CIA, more like CYA. Joke's on us. It's really just insane that in the 90s, America effectively gutted its own industrial system, turning itself into basically a weapons manufacturer while enriching China. Then we turn around once China's economy is mature enough to wield competitive weapons, start a totally pointless war to enrich the weapons manufacturers even further while robbing thousands of their money and lives. Yeah. Sun's out, guns out. Sam Seder on the PBD podcast is going to be hilarious. It's one of the ridiculous but eclectic right-wing podcasts out there. I don't know if I realized it was that right-wing, but we'll see. One thing I will say about the podcast, they will interview, debate anyone. Apparently, they set up Jason Whitlock to debate Roland Martin, and Jason Whitlock angrily bailed on the podcast, even though he was already in Miami, Florida. My app is broken. How is everybody at the MR? Okay, we've sent your app into quality control. We're trying to see it. Jay Tingle, Jeff Gannon's personal ad famously boasted, "I don't leave marks, just good impressions." Scott McClellan's mom had been mayor of Austin 20 years earlier. I'm not sure how those two things are related, the mayor and the Gannon, but it is what it is. All right, let's get to this. There's a lot of anticipation that Donald Trump is going to be indicted. Donald Trump was convinced it was today. Maybe it will be. Is there, what's amazing about Donald Trump saying that it was going to be today? Do you ever remember him giving a date for anything? It's usually just like in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
2 weeks, 6 months, 3 weeks, 3 weeks or months, 3 weeks. Here are, and as you know, Donald Trump called for full mobilization. Manhattan courthouse of all my people.
Protest.
And Newsmax's Sean Kraisman went down to the
his name's Sean
supporters.
Kraisman.
Yeah, Kraisman.
That's funny.
Went down to talk to all the supporters gathering outside of Trump Tower in support of Donald Trump, and this is what he found.
Interestingly enough, we bring you this live shot here. We know the former president has called for protests in a peaceful manner. Many Republicans push back on that, but interestingly enough, it's the opposite side that's outside protesting now, saying insurrection, TikTok, time's up. No one is above the law. Trump is guilty. Again, many supporting the possible indictment of former President Trump there. Again,
those signs really look like they were made by the grassroots groups too, don't they, Sean?
Yeah, we'll continue to follow that. Again, barricades have been put up in.
I mean, they're big signs. They could be probably made by Ron DeSantis, if I had to guess.
Probably print those out pretty easily too.
Only elite, only George Soros has a printer that could print something that big. People are pretty excited to have Donald Trump indicted.
I mean, my attitude towards this is sort of like my attitude towards UFOs. Like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yes, I agree.
That's where I'm at here.
But I'm of course, in favor. I mean, the guy should be held to account for any law breaking he did. And I hope this ends up setting a standard for all presidents who break the law, regardless of party or what. So that'll be fun. They did not exactly expect that down to Trump Towers, I don't think. Here, of course, is Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, you may not know, because you're probably not old enough if you're watching this show. In 1995, Lindsey Graham was one of the impeachment managers, if I remember correctly, for the Bill Clinton impeachment as a House member, telling us how horrible it is for the children out there who need to hear that Bill Clinton had sex with somebody in the White House. Oral copulation. Very difficult to tell the children about this. And of course, the children all knew because Lindsey Graham and his buddies were all over TV talking about it constantly. But here's Lindsey Graham now, slightly different perspective on the rule of law.
So are you concerned about the District Attorney Bragg, Alvin Bragg, indicting President Trump next week in an unprecedented way, and the circus that would be around that?
Yeah, it's going to blow up our country, and this is a bunch of BS. You've had the prosecutor before Bragg, Mr. Vance, look at the case and pass on it. You had the U.S. Attorney in New York say, I'm not going to do it federally. Right. There was an intervening cause other than Trump running. One of the guys in the DA's office wrote a book very critical of Vance. You should have prosecuted Trump. You let him off, and Bragg feels that pressure. He's a George Soros-backed prosecutor. He can't take the heat. So the guy is yielding to the political pressure generated by the former prosecutor, and this is a case without merit, in my view. Donald Trump will be the only person in the history of New York prosecuted under this theory.
Yeah. What is... I mean... Graham can't possibly know what the case is against Trump because it's in front of a grand jury. I mean, Michael Cohen went to prison for it. So people obviously get prosecuted for this. It's just a question of who directed Michael Cohen to do it. That's all. This is not a complicated situation. Michael Cohen went to prison. Where was where was Lindsey Graham complaining about Michael Cohen going to prison? I mean,
It's going to blow the country up if Michael Cohen gets arrested for this.
You know, I think honestly, what they're afraid of is that it doesn't blow the country up.
Right, exactly.
That largely, you know, people don't care. And, you know, we saw this yesterday. We played all these clips. All of these Republicans, they all want him to go to jail. There's nothing Lindsey Graham wants more than Donald Trump to go to jail. That way he can pretend to love Donald Trump and not have to deal with Donald Trump. That's what's going on here. Here is Kevin McCarthy. Exact same incentive structure for Kevin McCarthy. I'm going to pretend that I'm upset that Donald Trump might go to jail, and I'm going to pray that Donald Trump goes to jail. Here's Kevin McCarthy with the pretending.
About the investigation that your three committee chairman and yesterday into the prosecutor from New York. You guys have raised a lot of concerns about the prosecutor, but what about the actual allegations here that the former president may have falsified business records to cover, for hush money payments to cover up this alleged affair with an adult film actress? Do you have any concerns about that?
Look, the thing I think about, it was interesting. So someone briefed me on the use of money, a situation like this before, and you probably covered this. Remember when the DNC and Hillary Clinton paid the law firm $1 million, but and said that it was for something else, and we found out later it wasn't. It was all about the Russia collusion. It wasn't for legal part. And so they went through and they got investigated. $1 million they spent. And you know what? At the end of the day, they didn't get prosecuted. They got fined. Hillary's campaign got fined $8,000, and the DNC got fined $100,000. Even though they used $1 million, they knowingly hid the fact of what they were doing to try to hide. They got investigated. So I look at it from this perspective. We live in America, and it should be equal justice. This was personal money. This wasn't trying to hide. This was 7 years ago, statute of limitation. And I think in your heart of hearts, you know, too, that you think this is just political. And I think that's what the rest of the country thinks. And we're kind of tired of that. I mean, we're...
In your heart of hearts, Manu Raju, I think you know this is political.
I think what's political about this is, like, everyone saw Trump and realized he's a big-time crook, and then looked at prosecutors and be like, how has this guy been gallivanting around this whole time?
Right.
Yeah, that puts them in a tricky political situation.
And you know what's making it political is an entire political party talking about what a New York City district attorney's doing. Where is the attacks in Georgia? I mean, They're doing the same thing. Why have they not been crowing about the existence of a grand jury in the first place? It's not like this came out of nowhere. This has been going on for years. It's just that they ended up finding, or possibly finding, that they want to indict him, this grand jury. So we'll see. Let's get to what some of the right-wing talkers are saying. Here is what the most interesting part about this indictment. It will be sort of like, what does Ron DeSantis do? And we saw what he's basically going to do yesterday, where he basically said, like, I don't know anything about Donald Trump paying off a porno star and this and that. I mean, first off, the porno star part about it is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter what she did as a job.
I mean, it was relevant to them wanting to pay her off, I think, slightly.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. No? I mean, I think just the fact that he had an affair with her is probably like part of the reason. It's like, maybe she's just the one who didn't, take the money.
Right.
There were other people they paid off, I'm sure, right? Or maybe she was just the one that, cost a little more. I have no idea.
Right.
But here is Steve Bannon, very upset about the way that Ron DeSantis defended Donald Trump. This is really funny. And then Mike Lindell is still there. Mike Lindell, incidentally, I didn't realize this. He is chief of the Steve Bannon Election Fraud Bureau.
I mean,
so
who better?
That's pretty prestigious. He said the other day that I think MyPillow was it saying that there's potential for bankruptcy? I'm not sure.
Well, he said the funding of all of these election inquiries and lawsuits, he's like, MyPillow is essentially, it's nearly broke. Like,
I just don't understand how MyPillow, a business, gets to expend that money. Like, it doesn't seem like a business expense that could reduce your taxes. It should be.
We'll all sleep better if we fight tyranny as it comes in the form of funky election machines.
I wonder if he writes it off as some type of promotional thing for MyPillow.
That'd be great.
It's possible, but here is with Steve Bannon.
Governor DeSantis, you're better than this. That was a weasel approach, and don't give me this.
He's not.
Don't throw anything about the porn star. Don't need to hear it from you. Okay, don't need to hear it. Okay, Mike Lindell, the Election Crime Bureau report, sir.
Well, first of all, DeSantis is the Trojan horse we thought he was. I just want to put that out there, how disgusting he is. Remember, everybody, he met with Dominion lawyers on figuring out a way to make it easier to sue people for defamation, like MyPillow and Mike Lindell. If they arrest our great President Donald Trump, hands down, he wins the 2024 election.
I sort of think that they don't really believe that.
Yeah, is that just like an article? Like, that's just like something they keep saying. I don't know. Like,
I mean, why wouldn't they welcome it? Hands down, he gets elected president of the United States.
Yeah, like you would really welcome it in that case.
Yeah, I think they're really terrified that no one cares. That none of their people, there's going to be
speak it into existence.
There's going to be a huge protest in the Commons and I don't know, the capital of Arkansas or something. But I think people are going to be. I think obviously his supporters will be very, very angry, and it may help him win the Republican primary. But I'm not quite sure I get it. Why they think.
Can you maintain that energy throughout a general campaign? Like, I just don't see it.
I am still under indictment. Day 400 of me still being under indictment.
I mean, these same people said that him getting impeached would lead to him being reelected too, right? So, I mean.
Oh, and
like Tim
how
Pool.
many other things? What was the other thing we just brought up the other day in the fall of 2022? that was supposedly going to hurt the Democrats. We just keep hearing these narratives over and over again. It doesn't work.
Yeah, right. Let me look that up, because there was something where it was like they're going to sweep the midterms.
Yeah,
Like
on and on. Here is Ben Shapiro trying to make that argument. Now, I understand. Well, here's Ben Shapiro trying to make the argument that it's going to help Donald Trump get elected if he gets indicted.
Like what Trump knows in his bones and what his team knows is that this indictment, if it does happen, really good for him politically. Really good for him politically. Because again, it recalibrates the race. The entire, as I've said before, the entire basis of Donald Trump's 2016 election was very simple. They hate me because they hate you. Right? The reason they're coming after me, I was their buddy. Hillary Clinton came to my wedding. Like, I was friends with all these people until the moment I declared that I was on your side. And at that moment, they began to target me, and they never stopped targeting me. Not only during the election cycle, but also during my presidency. And by the way, he was right. They did target him throughout his presidency. You had members of the FBI who were targeting him with nonsense like the Steele dossier. You had people like James Comey who were essentially bootstrapping into existence entire Russian collusion investigations based on nonsense and then leaking them to the press. You had all sorts of garbage that was just being dumped on Trump day in and day out because he was a Republican and because he didn't stand for the same principles that the New York Times wanted him to stand for. And that was a pretty good campaign. And then in 2020, Donald Trump ran a very, very poor campaign.
What Shapiro gets right here is that it is aggrievement that motivates the conservative mind here, and the pretend aggrievement that is associated with me. When they attack me, they're attacking you, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they need to feel like they are attacked at all costs to motivate them to be interested in government. You're being attacked by Colin Kaepernick. You're being attacked by Mexicans. You're being attacked by caravans. You're being attacked by Muslims. You're being attacked by women, on and on and on. And they need that to motivate their voters. I mean, he's correct about that, without a doubt. The idea that James Comey made up this Russia collusion thing from whole cloth, it's absurd. It's absurd. And they're trying to revise the reality of the history. I'm not saying that's why Hillary Clinton lost, but the idea that Trump's campaign manager, Manafort, was not all wrapped up in this. I mean, why did Trump have to issue these pardons? Why did he have to do that? Because the deep state, the FBI or the Justice Department were all in cahoots under him. It's a fantasy. People hated Donald Trump. That's right. Not unfortunately, because he's a Republican, which is really the big reason why people should have been had a problem with Trump, because he's exactly like the rest of the Republican Party. Wasn't it like Jeb Bush's campaign that started the Steele dossier? They handed it off.
Right, yeah. Yes,
I mean,
yes.
This is it's all revisionist history. This is all like this is all the lost cause all over again. Keep playing.
He was a Republican, and because he didn't stand for the same principles that the New York Times wanted him to stand for. And that was a pretty good campaign. And then in 2020, Donald Trump ran a very, very poor campaign. He ran a poor campaign on COVID. He ran a poor campaign with regard to the riots. It was just a fragmentary campaign, and he lost.
Fragmentary?
And then his entire campaign became, I didn't actually lose, right? And you all have to stand out there and take the bullet for me. Well, here is the thing. When he gets arrested and indicted, he's not asking anybody to take the bullet for him. At that point, everybody immediately reverts back to teams. And everybody says, well, the reason you're going after him is because this is obviously a BS case and you want him off the playing field. And so it's actually quite good for Trump, politically speaking, to be indicted. And everyone knows this. This is not any sort of secret in politics. You think his poll numbers among Republicans in a primary go up or down after he's indicted? Obviously, they go up. A lot of people immediately revert to, if the Democrats hate that guy enough that they are trying to arrest him, then probably we need to back him. Right? That is just going to be the natural consequence of this. And so the notion that Trump is going to, pay any sort of severe political price for being indicted, I think is an absolute lie. Does that mean that Trump wants to be that? No, I don't think anybody wants to be indicted. But to pretend that it's not going to have an impact on the race is silly. And again, that is the reason why there are fundraising emails that went out over the weekend for Donald Trump predicated on the indictment. Just from a political point of view, it's not a terrible thing for Donald Trump to be indicted if you are Team Trump and you want him nominated in 2024. That, again, is why the focus is now turned to what are all the Republicans saying about Donald Trump, as though their world has to revolve around whatever legal problems Donald Trump is having today.
What's interesting about this is he's making an interesting concession, because he's not talking about the general election, right? He's talking about the Republican primary. That the Republican voter is again motivated by this sense of aggrievement. And if he thought that it was because what's fascinating is you watch all these Republicans saying this is completely politically motivated. Yet, according to Ben Shapiro, they all know it's going to help Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So are we to believe that this is politically motivated by the Manhattan district attorney to promote Donald Trump? No, he's just, following the lead. I mean, is it political in the sense that I think people would be upset if the DA had a prosecutable case and didn't pursue it? Yeah, I think people would be upset.
Yeah, I think there's a way that, like, people who I suspect of being DeSantis people, like Shapiro, especially Dave Rubin, when they say that thing of, oh, this is just going to help Trump, I almost feel like they're worried it is and they're annoyed by it. They're like, damn it, this is going to make it harder to make our, the big rollout for Ron.
Yep. I think there's some truth to that, without a doubt. I think they're worried about that. Opening up the phone lines, 646-257-3920 is the number. Let's go to the IMs for a minute. What do we got? Providence is bigger than Worcester. No, it's not. Jokes on Us. I read that one. PDB podcast, read that one. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Oh, right. Brooklyn Sue. I just watched Shock and Awe last night about Knight Ridder and how the truth was willfully ignored by every other news organization. Infuriating to remember it all over again. Indeed.
I honestly didn't know about the Knight Ridder thing. I'm just seeing this now.
Yep. Oh, yeah. No, they were really... And Greg Mitchell, who we've had on the show, had a publication editor and publisher, and they would reiterate a lot of the Knight Ridder stuff. They would get a lot of that Knight Ridder stuff out there. There was no social media. So the way that you found blogs was really only by other blogs. It was weird. There was no central clearinghouse for this information, but everybody seemed to find it. Calling from an 860 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
860. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Kyle from Queens.
Kyle from Queens. What's on your mind?
Oh my gosh, I've been listening for a little while, and it's the first time calling in. I just wanted to kind of thank you. I kind of got down the Dave Rubin rabbit hole.
Oh, geez, Kyle, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Has that cleared up for you at all?
Wait, what was that?
Do you still have a rash from that?
Oh my God. No.
Oh, okay,
no, I don't. I am completely clear. Just want to thank you. I really enjoyed all the content you guys have made. It's really kind of opened my eyes to some things, and I don't know if I'm on the left, but I'm definitely anti-right, and it's kind of inspired me with like musical stuff too. So it's been really cool. Just wanted to thank you.
How did you how did that happen? How did that whole departure from Rubin's world happen?
Well, I got married, and my wife's like very left, and I don't know. I kind of stumbled on the YouTube channel. The whole Steven Crowder thing was really fun to watch.
Great.
I actually wrote a song about it, so yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, fun! Send it to us.
Oh, will do. It's I don't know if you like super heavy stuff, but it is death metal, so I will.
All right, we'll play it. Appreciate the call.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Calling from a 202 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Is that me?
Yes, it's you.
Hi. My name's Elena. I'm calling from Virginia, Alexandria, so right south of DC, if you know the area.
A little bit. What's on your mind, Elena?
Well, I really wanted to talk about Marianne Williamson. I wanted to listen a bit more deeply what your thoughts are on her. And start that conversation.
I mean, to be totally honest, I don't have any deep thoughts on her. There are some things that I've heard her say that I don't necessarily agree with. There's some things, there are some positions that she has I do agree with. I tend not to be, as a person, some of her spiritual stuff doesn't necessarily resonate with me, but I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's just my personality. But my feeling is more generic about her than that. Or my position, which is we do need someone who is going to be articulating a more progressive view than Joe Biden represents in the primary. And I honestly don't know who that person is going to be. And I don't even know necessarily who I'd want it to be. She would not be my first choice for those reasons, but we need somebody. And so I'm certainly supportive of the idea that she would run in a primary. I am these days pretty much every primary, all primaries are good.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I hear you. The problem that I have, I think a little bit of what the media, you can say, the mainstream media and also independent media, is that they're really harping hard on the whole spirituality thing. And I feel really, frankly, that it's almost a way of kind of defanging people that actually have very radical and progressive positions. I don't want to echo her too much, but, thinking of how Martin Luther King is kind of portrayed as, this good-hearted, visionary, loving Baptist minister who just wanted nothing more than equal treatment of African Americans, and history tends to whitewash the fact that he was a socialist. He espoused all these things about changing the economic system, actually recognizing that white Americans were also very poor, even, some case even more poor, and that it required an entire kind of systemic change. And, I just worry that the conversation has kind of become, entirely, not my dog, there's a dog outside, kind of overrun with like, voodoo,
Well, I mean, to be honest,
I just want to jump in. I want to say, like, the thing is like, it's not the spiritual. It's just idealistic. Like, regardless of the content of the spiritualism, it's sort of an idealistic thing. Like MLK, in addition to being more of a socialist than I think Marianne Williamson is, which isn't to insult Marianne Williamson, it's just like MLK was like more about that. Like MLK had a big coalition behind him. So that, to me, it's like, I think we like primary should be a place to engage on ideas, but really it's not super interesting until like when Bernie got like the nurses union and different groups like that to get behind him. Then it's actually like more than just a sort of a discourse thing.
And here's the thing is that like I tend to agree with your assessment of how the media is treating her, but that on some level is also why like she's not necessarily my preferred candidate, because I also understand she's not going to win. She doesn't have a movement behind her. She has no infrastructure, and it's a completely different animal. She is running like an issue campaign. I don't know what that issue is going to be, but it is what what Bernie essentially tried to do in 2016, which is he was just running to raise certain issues. In that campaign, it was really money in our politics and the power of essentially the 1%. And she's not the best person to do that because of the fact that she has this baggage about spirituality. Yes, it would be nice if our media did not use whatever they can to discredit left perspectives, but they're going to. And in a perfect world, I'd rather not spend the time lamenting on the ease in which they're able to dismiss some of her ideas, which I am supportive of. In a perfect world, that would be great if that didn't exist, but it does. And so, particularly when we're running an issue campaign or like essentially a messaging campaign, the messenger becomes, important in that respect. But yeah, I share your lament, but I wouldn't spend too much time on it.
Yeah, well, everything you were saying about Bernie Sanders, it is something that she has echoed. It's one thing that I've admired from her, and I guess maybe this time around, is that she's really very clear on making a campaign focused on the economic, the economic position. She doesn't delve into just for context, I just want to say, I'm an atheist. Like, I am a staunch atheist. Like, just the mere mention of God makes me break out in hives. But there were things that she said, that even to me, someone that is not really in that world, it spoke to me, and
well, maybe she'll be able to resonate. I mean, I'm not discounting your perspective. Maybe that will resonate with people. I mean, the tricky part is to assume that the media is going to ignore those things. Like, why do we know her name?
Yeah, she did take a path to kind of, espouse universal truths through a more spiritual route. Some people take the political route, or the activist route. She felt more comfortable speaking in a more.
I'm not denigrating it. I'm just saying that that comes with a certain amount of baggage. Look, I didn't like anything about Hillary Clinton, not anything. There were a lot of things I did not like about Hillary Clinton's politics, but it was also undeniable. One of the things that made her a flawed candidate, regardless of whether you supported her platform or her politics or whatever, one of the things that made her a flawed candidate, just as a pure assessment as a product within the American political system, is that there had been a cottage industry built around tearing her down and creating, fictions about her. Ones that weren't even the issues that I had with her politics. And that's just a reality. It's just a reality. When you're looking for a standard bearer, you can't go back in time and fix certain things. You're looking for the best one you can in that moment. And right now, Marianne Williamson is it. There could be somebody else who comes into the race who, you may think is a better standard bearer for those issues. I may think is a better standard, bearer for those issues. We'll see.
So I'm just curious, if it really came down, let's just say, in a fantastical world where Marianne Williamson and Joe Biden were really like the only two options, equal influencer, I'm not sure. It was down to those two, and she actually had a shot. Who would you actually vote for? I'm just curious.
If she had a shot at winning the primary?
Yes.
Or what about the general?
You mean for the presidency?
Yeah.
To become president? I would want Marianne Williamson.
No, I'm asking you, telling me that you're giving me a hypothetical where she has a chance to win the primary. Does she also, in this hypothetical, have a legitimate chance to win the general election?
Yes. I mean, with her attributes and her
if there's a candidate whose policies I like better, who has an obvious ability to win in a general election, then yeah, I would be probably supportive of her. But but that's also like, if I had wings, could I fly? I'm not going to jump off a building right now to test that theory.
No, I understand, but you see how it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy here, right? How
No, it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. No, I'm sorry. I don't accept that. I am not capable of willing 100 million people to do something.
Or Bernie would have won.
Or Bernie would have won.
No, of course. I understand. I mean, we're all stuck in the same.
I guarantee you that when Marianne Williamson ends her campaign, there will be at least 150 million voters who have absolutely never heard her name.
Yeah, and I think that's a shame.
I mean, I'm not. It may very well be a shame, but this is, that is a problem. Now, there may be value in those 50 million people having heard what she said in a vigorous primary, and so in that respect, I think there could be value in it, but we have to be like, understand that when we're being aspirational, and when we're making a like an assessment, that we have like the ability to make an assessment. And so, it doesn't matter. I guess what I'm telling you is, it doesn't matter whether, I want to vote for Marianne Williamson more than Joe Biden. I live in New York, and that makes it much easier for me to take votes that I don't think are going to like empower Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. What's important is that people remember what voting is. Voting is a way to get the most desirable outcome you can that is possible. That's all it is. And in a primary, the calculations are a little bit different than they are in a general election. So appreciate the call.
Thank you for the time.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Okay. Let's have some fun now. Watching The Good Liars with the material that they have in terms of like DeSantis Trump is going to be a fun primary season. Here is Jason Selvig, one of the Good Liars. Where is he? Is he in the studio?
No, this is in New York here out. Right Side Broadcasting is covering some Trump protests live.
Oh, okay. So they're covering some of the protests, and he just managed to sort of get in front of their camera, and they didn't recognize him.
As like a Trump supporter.
Misdemeanors and change some misdemeanors to felonies, and is specifically prosecuting Donald Trump when he did very little wrong, if anything. He's prosecuting.
Look around the city right now. I mean, there's crime everywhere.
Hey, Good
right?
Liars, what's up?
How are you? Good to see you. There's crime everywhere, and I think like this is a political prosecution. It has to be, right? Like that's the only way it could be happening right now, is if they're going after him politically. The only other option is that Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes and is a loser who can't deal with the fact that he lost the election because he based his whole personality on being a winner and calling people losers.
So you think his attitude, his approach, his personality is what
is what got us in this mess in the first place, potentially? Or I'm just going to choose to believe that the election was stolen and everything that he says, because I kind of like base my whole personality on supporting Donald Trump, so I'm not going to maybe accept the outcome.
You live in the city.
I live in the city, yeah.
So how's the city changed over the last couple of years here? I mean, I know crime, but I don't live here, so I can't judge whether or not it's gone up or down.
Yeah, the New York City, I think, is maybe 59th in crime right now. I think there's 4 cities in Indiana that have more crime statistically than New York does? Yeah, exactly. So I haven't really noticed a lot of crime, but I do see it on Fox News. They say it's much more dangerous now. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any more crime. So like maybe it might not be true, but I'm going to choose to believe that it is true because I did see that on Fox News.
Yeah, of course, because whatever you see on Fox News is true, right?
Yeah, well,
and just like CNN and MSNBC, if you see it on cable news, it's got to be true.
Donald Trump said CNN and MSNBC are fake news.
That's right. We got to use the fake news. Okay, so what do you?
What's amazing? It's like, and the kid knew who he was.
Yeah, he had his spot blown up too.
He had his spot, but he just blew right through it. The kid's just watching it. It's unbelievable.
I like the dig of, I based my whole personality on
and he points at
him. Looks at the kid wearing the hat and the scarf. Oh boy. I know it's rude. That's why Donald Trump is going to win, folks, because of the good liars. They're going out there and they're being mocking, and then somebody's going to go home and realize that that was mocking, and then they're going to decide to vote for Donald Trump.
Man, kid, you're so close. If you know who the good liars are and you're still showing up to Trump rallies with that dumb hat on, come on, buddy.
Really impressive. Let's... Oh, yeah, here's Michael Knowles. I mean, this guy's so desperately trying to... and we're doing our best here, right? I mean,
Give him attention.
We're trying to give him some attention. There's a lot of clamoring and fighting over there at the Daily Wire. And at the commissary, people get a little bit upset. Matt Walsh, very upset that Knowles is trying to hone in on his anti-trans rants, trying to outdo him. And so Knowles comes, it's basically coming for the rack he wants to, or it's worse than the rack, right? We're just talking about, let's bring out the gallows.
Hey, Michael. Sitting here enjoying a lovely leftist tears tumbler. Turns out the leftist tears are quite delicious when paired with a lovely bourbon. Doing some thinking, and
pause it for 1 second. I was like, what is this, a phone call that he's getting? Like, why does it sound so good?
It's like a voicemail service.
It sounds exactly like Michael Knowles, though. Like, I thought it was like the AI.
The best is like they call in, they're talking about liberal tears with his whiskey.
Yeah, all the love the signifiers. Like, I got my is there a cigar there too? I hope so.
Yeah. Incidentally, I should just say, those aren't tears. I urinated in your whiskey. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Hey, Michael. Sitting here enjoying a lovely leftist tears tumbler. Turns out the leftist tears are quite delicious when paired with a lovely bourbon.
So lame.
Doing some thinking, and I was wanting to get your take on something fairly light, public execution. Do you think in our civilized society, in our modern Western culture, do you think that there's a place for public execution? I'm sort of struck by the fact that we don't tend to see the, lethal injections now. And I don't know that the deterrence is truly there for criminals with our current handling and implementation of the death penalty. So, love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Certainly. Can we just dwell on that guy? Like, what a weird guy.
I'm just sitting here drinking a whiskey. And I thought I'd leave a voice message for Michael Knowles.
About how we don't see enough people being put to death by the state.
What? We've been incarcerating people in their the better part of their lives and killing people, but somehow the deterrent's not working. Maybe, what if we just did this in public?
Televised it.
All right, we can get to his answer.
Thoughts? Thanks.
Certainly. Yeah, I think that would do a lot to bring back the deterrent effect of capital punishment, certainly. But furthermore, it would be good because people just don't see death, period, anymore.
pause it for 1 second. But first of all, what do you mean bring back the deterrent of the cap? But like, when was the cap? Incidentally, all the research suggests, and this has been studied to death, that there is no deterrent effect for capital punishment. That there is no deterrent effect. So I don't know what he means by bring back. And I don't know what he means by people don't see dead people anymore. Like, where was this guy? Like, what did this guy time travel from like the 1800s?
Yeah, when we used to keep
frontier?
dead bodies in the family room for a week to visit. Like, what is he talking about?
It's unbelievable, but go ahead.
Period anymore.
Oh, go back.
We used to see death.
We used to see death? How old is this guy? He's like 122 or something?
From like Encino.
Just don't see death, period, anymore. We used to see death. I'm not saying we want more people to die, but we need to recognize that death does happen. We try to run away from death. We try to hide death. We hide aging. We pack ourselves full of cosmetics. We pack ourselves full of all sorts of surgeries to pretend that we're not aging. And then when people look like they're about to die, we shove them off into special little centers, hospice and old age homes, and we try to just separate them. When they do die, we don't really do open casket wakes anymore. We don't do proper funerals anymore. We do these brief little celebrations of life. We burn up the body as quickly as possible. We ignore the fact that death has happened.
So to compensate, let's start hanging people.
Well, just to be clear, I went to a wake, an open casket wake, like 4 days ago, like a week ago.
Like the thing that has changed is like, okay, yeah, they're at funeral homes instead of the parlor now. Like that's a change since 100 years ago. Like.
It's a very strange, I don't know what time he's referring to that he experienced something differently. The guy's like, what? He's like, what, at 35?
Past lives. Maybe he has past lives.
40? How old is the guy? 45?
He's got to be 40, I would hope.
Well, okay. A Google search says he's 33. Is that possible?
Jesus. Oh, boy. He's looking
fact
old.
check that.
But be that as it may, I am 56 years old, and I can assure you that we didn't have dead bodies around around town when I was a kid. Go ahead.
Of life. We burn up the body as quickly as possible. We ignore the fact that death has happened. Then sometime later, maybe you will have a celebration of life ceremony where you basically just gather with your friends and have dinner to try to process death. But it's a death that you won't look in the face.
What?
And so we live our lives trying to put it out of our head, but death is very important. It's one of the four final things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. You are living your life as a preparation to die.
What about taxes?
You need to be prepared for your death. In the olden times, people would pray for a good death, by which they meant a death that they saw coming, that they could prepare for, that wasn't sudden. Today, people pray for a good death, meaning they don't want to know what's happening. They basically want a piano to fall on their head so that they're just walking along one day with their Frappuccino, having a lovely time thinking about, I don't know, whatever they just saw on Instagram, and then it's all over and they think they go to oblivion. They don't think that the soul persists after natural death. And so our view of death is just so perverse now.
That we should start.
And we're so
Publicly
separated from it that,
people.
public executions would also help us to have a little memento mori. Of course. Next question.
First off, the reason why people want deaths like that is because capitalism made it so difficult at the end of your life. There is no venerating old people. You incidentally, I should tell you, Michael Knowles, you belong to a party that 24 months ago was calling for the death of old people via COVID just to get them out of the way so that we get the kindling burnt off. Personally, I think I am against capital punishment. But if we're going to have it, we should put it on TV. We should make the American public realize how barbaric this practice is, where we as a society in the cold day openly and methodically kill someone.
Yeah.
As a society, we decide that we have made a determination that actually premeditated murder is not, or I should say premeditated killing, to be very precise here, is okay if you have a good reason to do it. That's basically what the message of capital punishment is. And if we're going to do that, then you're right. We should put that on TV and everybody should own it. But the idea that this has anything about making people die with honor and giving them an opportunity to do that, there is an opportunity to do that. Let's up Medicare and Medicaid to give people end of life care, and also allow for people to have some control over the timing of their deaths. A lot of people who may not want to take cancer treatment or in pain, and we don't allow that in the vast majority of states in this country.
Right. Yeah, I love the small government people saying small government, but we should have the state regularly execute our fellow citizens, and that should be a part of our culture.
91 Route 5. It sounds like Michael Knowles missed the Catholic teaching on the death penalty being inadmissible.
I don't think he's a Catholic.
It's amazing. It's amazing how this guy can be a fundamentalist Catholic and be for the death penalty. Never mind for the death penalty, but also like for public execution. I just find that.
I guess he is a Catholic. He's born in 1990 as well.
Like, what era was it that he was being exposed to all this death? Like in the early aughts? I guess maybe he's talking about 9/11. Calling from a 941 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm Carlos from Florida.
Carlos from Florida. What's on your mind?
Oh, so just a quick comment and then a question right after. So I would like anyone acknowledging Michael Knowles. Is that who we were just speaking about?
Yeah.
Anyone listening to that needs to remember this public execution is happening every day. It just happens to be for the populations that are not acknowledged. I'm an organizer, LGBTQ community and transgender person who works in LGBTQ memorial services. And my quick comment real quick is I want my community to come out and participate in things that are not drag related and essentially be a presence. Coming from the South, I have a lot of friends basically mass exodizing, or there's a mass exodus going to the North to run away from these laws. And I believe there's a way for us to have a presence in our community that isn't just what they think we are. We can clean up, show up to our local parks, create student organizations, and just be present with a smile, with no intentions of politicizing ourselves, even though we're painted as political people. With that being said, it's such an awesome thing that I'm talking to you. My question is basically, there's this new HB bill, and I wish I can get the number for you. It is out of Texas, 4378, backed by GOP Representative Steve Taw. It's a House bill that basically is criminalizing drag performances, and critics are saying that there's wider implications for trans presence in those states that are trying to pass these so-called bounty bills. I guess my question to you is, what is your guys' interpretation about the legal constitutionality of these things? And also, just in general, how bad is this? Because a lot of trans people right now are looking at this bill and running away.
I'm not familiar specifically with that bill. I don't know how you can outlaw like drag shows. I really don't know how you can do that. In terms of a constitutional question. And I imagine the ACLU is going to test these cases. I also don't have confidence in saying that something is constitutional or not constitutional with this Supreme Court. They could, the way that they are, sort of attacking the rights of others is to sort of inflate the religious freedoms of people. And that's what this is, my guess is stuff like this is going to come down to. So I don't know. I really don't know, but we'll dig into it more. And I think we're probably overdue for having somebody on to talk about these various laws. How bad is it? I mean, I don't think I would want to live in a state like that, but I do think that, like, I do also understand your desire to stand and fight and to do so in a way that, it reminds me a little bit of that like Clean for Gene campaign. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Gene McCarthy, was it Gene McCarthy? Eugene McCarthy ran in, was it 68? I think it was. And a lot of support from a lot of people who were, so-called hippies or whatnot. And the idea was like, get yourself a haircut, put on a jacket and tie, and go out and provide the aesthetics that are going to allow you to help us win politically. And I think people need to feel comfortable doing what stuff like that or not. I don't think it's necessarily that, something that people should do as much as like they could do. For me personally, I have always broadly leaned towards having aesthetics that will not get in the way of me communicating with a broader number of people. But so I think that tends to be a good idea. Although, there are times where I'm like, well, like a beard doesn't help in this business, I don't think. But at one point I was just like, I'm tired of shaving. So I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. What should we do? Should we do this Proud Boy?
Oh yeah, getting.
I mean, this is pretty. I don't know what these Proud Boys thought they were doing. There was only about 6 of them, and they showed up in. Where was this? Do you know exactly what part of the city it was, Bradley?
This is in Manhattan. I just don't know exactly where. There was a drag queen story hour event that New York Attorney General Letitia James was attending,
and there were were they Antifa folks? I think so.
Yeah,
they were
so
there.
They were like some counter demonstrators to the
Right.
Proud Boys.
And the Proud Boys showed up, and I don't know what they thought they were going to do, but this is not like well, they get sent home pretty unceremoniously. Look at some of this footage. This footage is courtesy of freedomnews.tv.
I came here to help people, not get the shit beat out of me. I have 2 other fucking buddies out. No, they put on a call. Where's your car?
Pause it. Now, it seems like he said he's an EMT and he came here to help people, not get the shit beat out of him. But who is he helping?
Yeah.
Like who was who was he supposedly helping? But continue.
Saving the kids.
Yeah.
I'm an EMT. I came here to help people, not get the shit beat out of me. I have 2 other fucking buddies out. No, they put on a call. Where's your car? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck you people. You keep trying to take my picture. I don't know what he's doing with it.
Let's go.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
Can you tell us what happened?
What the fuck? Leave our city. Come back to Long Island.
That's my favorite. Go back to Long Island. Get out of our city.
There's something so pathetic about, like, I remember when I first heard about the Proud Boys, I don't know, half a decade ago or so, that they're like all 45-year-old bros calling themselves Proud Boys. I don't understand how you get to that base of a level.
It's just like, it's just buffs. Like they want to gear up and go out there and play, a soldier essentially. This is, this is the mentality of people like this. This is the mentality. Militant apathy. The media was trash. Correlation to Trump, that is, the media knew he was effed up and knew they had a rationale for Iraq was bullshit. It was about ratings and nerds in the media wanting to be in with the Republican in crowd. The half has never been told. It's a must read. F. Jason Whitlock. Corny ass Michael Knowles. I've seen plenty of death. I don't get erections from it. This clown is either a complete phony or he's a psychopath. Knowles thinks he's an effing Viking. Custodial artist. Great interview. I was an elementary student during 9/11 and the following years of war. Not only do I barely remember Iraq, but now as an adult, I saw a video of the opening bombardment of Baghdad. And if you told me that that was a deep fake of an attack on Phoenix, Arizona,
I had just gotten a TV in my room and cable, and my parents voted Bush in 2000, and sort of, I remember like the lead up to the shock and awe thing. It was like a TV show was going to be
Totally.
premiering. And I watched that, and I saw like the town, and it reminded me of like looking across the river to Bismarck, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, explosions there, and that was like the beginning of me changing my views about what exactly we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, Iraq was a very developed country, very secular, and there was, look, Saddam Hussein, horrible dictator, but like Spencer Ackerman said, there was wider distribution of the wealth of the country. He still had to rely. He still was like sort of like politically. He had to maintain political power, and it wasn't exclusively through, military might, although that was a big part of it, and the security state. Women worked, women went to school. Baghdad was fairly cosmopolitan, and yes, we bombed the hell out of it. For the better part of 20 years, I believe Iraq wasn't even close to U.S. culturally or technologically. To make up for yesterday, a Discord mod on the 828 area code will be calling. Side question, why do you still read my IMs? Great show if you shadow cancel me or not. The dead guy this guy is talking about is the anti-vax people that died of COVID. You don't want the open casket of that. Still may be a disease vector. Mr. Teeny, Talking Points memo supercut of coordinated attacks on Scott McClellan's book. Pooper Scoop, LA teacher union strike today in solidarity with a new school worker union. Send some support since it's pouring in LA right now. Oh, wow. 3-day strike. Check it out, folks. If you're going by, honk and maybe bring pizzas. Nature Girl, thanks for the flashback to the Jeff Gannon, James Guckert era. It really foreshadowed a lot of what the press eventually turned into. Bingo Dango. Blowback podcast, they talk about how all these Americans think tank and consultant nerds would be giving these bureaucratic jobs in Iraq, and they would complain asking why there were so many Iraqis working alongside them in the government offices. Kyle Rittenhouse was also cosplaying as a medic EMT when he went to city and killed people. Looks like it's common right-wing tactic. Yeah, I mean, what's the I'm an EMT going down there as with the Proud Boys?
Yeah.
Give me a break. Russ from Philly. Nathan Tankus would be a great guest about the recent banking crisis and a critique of the Federal Reserve and how its dual mandate is a departure from it. And its role at its founding as a lender of last resort to stave off a sort of crises we're seeing now. Star Fox. Sam, I just want to set the record straight to say that none of the people from the Discord Matt from Arkansas shouted out are radical centrists. We just don't want any Discord disinformation out there. Matt's a good guy, and we're working on his politics. How successful that will be is TBD. Left is best. Fair enough. Punch Drunk Pulpit. Maybe Spencer was too polite to mention it, but he also has a DC Comics miniseries coming out this month titled Waller versus Wildstorm. Check it out. Jennifer from St. Louis. Some of us are old enough to remember Jeff Gannon. In my neighborhood, there's a street named Gannon, so I think of him often. Count me out. Shock doctrine shook me to my core. Neoliberalism is such a destructive force that'll stop at nothing to devour anything belonging to the people. Also, PBD is a reactionary podcast with no real substance. Treat his show the way you would treat going on Rogan, Rubin, Daily Wire. Please cook his ass. Prairie Fire Kowalski. Howdy, Majority Report. So in brief, some brief agricultural news. The plant date in much of the USA, the plant date in much of the USA, but definitely the Midwest, has been pushed back about a week due to below to average temperatures. Don't let the denial drones say, how can there be global warming if it's so cold, without mentioning that climate models show with more heat creating dynamic variability in the jet stream, we are seeing polar air breaks south later in the season than normal. It's like we're experiencing more extreme weather events or something that scientists have been modeling for decades. Anyway, in good news, it looks like a monsoon rain hitting California. The water crisis has dissipated greatly, so our fruits, veggies, and nut supply is looking secure this year. Sam, how are the northeastern trees looking? I think we managed to avoid any early budding. It's gotten like colder in the past couple of weeks up here. Like we've had sustained like days in the 30s, which I don't think we had throughout any time during the winter. But knock on wood, I think we'll be okay. It's starting to get up into the 50s now, and if that holds, we'll be okay. I worry about a frost though, but we'll see. Matt, if you got the space, you should plant some hydrangeas in your apartment. They're beautiful flowers, express calm and coolness manifested through their blue to purple color and petals. Left is poggers. The IPCC report is pretty bad food-wise. Food is becoming less nutrition-rich with greater CO2 levels, causing more sugar and less vitamins in the finished foodstuffs. Eesh. All right, final call of the day. Calling from a 678 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 678. 678.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir,
Ooh,
Sam.
you almost did not become the final caller of the day. You almost became the caller that never was. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
I was lucky. Corey Page from Georgia.
Corey, what's on your mind?
I just recently heard you talking about the PBD podcast.
Yes, I'm going to do that on Thursday.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I had never actually heard of those guys until recently watching Kyle Kalinske go on there. And I thought they had relatively productive conversation.
Oh, good.
It seems like.
Maybe I'll check that one out. I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I don't know. I had to look it up when we got the invite. I'm not, and that is no, knock on this show, seems to be huge. But I don't know, if the lead of the most popular television show in the country was sitting right next to me, I would be looking at Bradley going like, who is this? So I don't generally know these things.
Fair enough. He's had some, they had Steven Crowder on the other day, which, good God, I didn't even bother watching that. Just because, Steven Crowder, that's a fun one. By the way, I loved the H3 thing you guys did with Steven Crowder. That was fantastic.
That was fun. Although I got to say, I was disappointed because I was very much looking forward to having a conversation with him. But what else you got?
Me too.
We got to get going here.
Really, leading up to this, I was actually going to question about you going on PBD. I had no idea about that happening. So the fact that you're telling me that you're going on Thursday, I would love to tune in and watch that. But my question was just going to be about your opinion on that. And you pretty much answered it with, saying you have.
I've got to go and, try and find some time to watch or read up about it. But, I assume, I don't know. I have no real assumptions about it, but, someone's going to fly me down to Florida for a couple hours. And it just so happened to be on a Thursday, so it could all work out. I don't have the kids this week, so.
Awesome.
All right, man. Appreciate the call.
Of course. I would definitely recommend checking out the Kalinske one if you do check out any of PBD's before you go on.
I will do that. All right. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you guys for everything. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go. Heard the guy is extremely wealthy. That's what I heard. Kirby, 424. I'm a Zoomer. I can tell you for a fact we all thought about death. Mark the Shark. My friends and I were 23 at the time of the invasion. 3 of them were sent over. Different men returned. Today I will stop at the grave of my best friend who took his own life 15 years ago as a result of his demons. Anytime you become indignant over these atrocities, I well up, and I know I have a true comrade. Thank you, Sam and crew. Much love. Yeah, I mean, and for what? Really, it's really a shame. It really is a shame. So many people, so much misery created by that, and for what end?
I mean, just think of all the houses across the country. I mean, I saw this with the drug war. You know, different, even like short of people getting locked up, you see the strain between like parents who are trying to raise kids and kids who are trying to enjoy themselves, and then you have this thing with like the trans stuff, and it's like that just gassing parents up with the exact wrong message to be, with what they need for what their kids actually need. It's just horrible.
Horrible. Austerity, Tony. I can afford to get mental health treatment, but on top of the copays, the steps to navigate insurance paying their end barely make it worth the effort. Indeed, I've talked about that a lot. Like it's like a second job. June, I am excited for my recent new membership. Love you guys. Well, you're going to get one of these. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, 5 more. A Square. Sam Ackerman is so great at explaining the causes and effects of the Iraq invasion, war pretenses, and consequences of empire. Thanks for Majority Report for not letting us forget, showing the sadly evergreen clip of Friedman thinking about Janine Garofalo and all the hell she caught. Indeed. Impulse from some people on the left to fall for these grifter candidates. Do I want a messaging campaign to hold Biden's feet to the fire in a primary? Yes. But Williamson, come on. She's very obviously a grifter. She doesn't help left causes. She's kind of crazy. She's dabbled in anti-vax. Have some kind of standard, people. I mean, hopefully, from my perspective, somebody else is going to jump in, but I honestly have no idea who that is. Josh from Tucson. Is it just me or is Sam a little out of focus? Do I need to wear my glasses? Sam inspiring death metal. Need Binder to hear to that. Am I out of focus? Oh, my connection. It's a little weirdo. Apple cideritis. Can we get a left piss tumbler in the merch shot? We might have to do that.
Figure out how to make that joke land somehow. Something with the Bongino.
We could put leftist tears and then put like a little asterisk. And then at the bottom underneath the glass, it says actually leftist pee. And we could market these as give them to your conservative.
Yeah, you can serve
so
them.
They can drink the leftist tears
Maybe
tumblers.
At the bottom of the cup, it says actually that was leftist pee.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Actually, don't they have those things like where you can where when you put a drink in, it changes like the glass?
Oh yeah, if it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be great. Then it just says leftist tears. And then when you put something cold in it, it actually goes actually leftist pee. That could be pretty.
It's going to cost about $80 for one.
Yeah,
of these.
that'll be like $150 for a glass. Ryan and Callie. I'm glad the caller doesn't have long Reuben. All right, 3 more. Tim Head. I never understood the leftist tears angle. Aren't tears mostly mucus? So they're admitting to eating salty boogers? Moxie boosted. Hannibal Lecter called in to the Daily Wire. WTF. Max the composer. Knowles misses his job as bring out your dead guy in Charlemagne's rule. JB Watsy. Hi, folks. Just wanted to amplify great lefty business. It's from Salem, Mass. Even Sam, you can do this in your legit accent when you destroy the pronunciation. The company is Black Mass Electronics. They make really good electric guitar pedals. Their motto is Black Lives Matter, trans rights are human rights. And if you don't believe this, our pedals aren't for you. They give half their profits to legit anti-racist and pro-trans charities. One year that was over $50K. I bought one of their pedals, the 1312, which has an upside down on fire cop car painted on the front because of their politics, but bought others because their pedals are really amazing. Please shout them out. It's Black Mass Electronics. Thanks. All right. And the final IM of the day. Gotta be Nick. I was in favor of the Iraq War as a 19-year-old. I was wrong. It was for a strategic position. Well, 19's a tough age to go against, all of these voices that were telling you it was a good idea. But broadly speaking, being doubtful is a good default position for these things. Bradley, Matt, great job today. Emma will be back tomorrow. I'll be here too. Although I'll only be here for the first half, I think, because I've got to run to get my plane. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar.